The ANC's Treasurer General, Paul Mashatile, has asked government to increase the grant given to political parties to over 500 million rand per year, saying that the Political Party Funding Act in its current form will hurt private donor funding on which political parties are hugely reliant. Mashatile says certain clauses of the Act, such as disclosure of donor identities, will be a deterrent for private parties wanting to donate more money, and warned that if funding is not increased, political parties will actually have to rely on the private sector for their existence. For more on the state's role in political party funding, let's bring in the IEC's head of party funding. That's George Mahlangu. Dr. Mahlangu, thanks very much for your time. Welcome to the AM report. Let's begin perhaps with a contextual question. Does the ANC's Treasury General have a point here? I mean, is it a legitimate case to raise that parties need more money from the state so as not to rely essentially on private donors?
Good morning, Ayanda, and good morning to your viewers. Ayanda, as the Commission, we are the implementers of the political party funding. At the moment, political parties receive funding from the public purse, and around 165 million or so has been allocated to all the political parties that are represented in both provincial and national legislatures. So how political parties run their business, I think the Commission can comment whether this money is sufficient or not.
But, I mean, from how things have worked in the past, does it make sense for any political party to be asking for more money on the basis of this argument? Essentially, what I'm understanding from what the ANC is saying is we need more money from the state so that we don't run to anybody else. But from how the IEC works and ways through which that's impacted the IEC, is it a sound argument to be making from your standpoint?
Look, if from the IEC, if the political parties, feel the pressure on the allocation that has been made by government, I think, it's up to the political parties, to request government to increase this funding. But let me say that, democracy gets weakened when political parties are weak. Now it makes sense that the political parties must have sufficient funding so that the democracy can be deepened and can be stronger. So whether what is allocated at the moment is sufficient or not, I think it's up to the political parties themselves, because they run their offices independent from the Commission.
All right. And does it make sense for us to be speaking about getting political parties more funding when there's this minor issue of the Political Funding Act that still needs to be finalized? I mean, even if the money will come from the state, should we not necessarily ensure that the Political Funding Act, which has been signed by the President, is finally legislated so that at least we know the lay of the land, so to speak, about how political parties are being funded to begin with?
It's a world phenomenon that political parties are funded by the state. But also political parties do fundraising. So the political party funding has been brought, to the fore, so that political parties can get money, from private sources, and that must be disclosed. Political parties have been getting money from private sources, but that, has been, done without the public knowing who has funded a particular political party. So this legislation is basically trying to, to bring that, to the fore, so that the public can know that company so-and-so or individual so-and-so has put money into the coffers of the political party.
How much of that relationship do we currently know now, Mr. Mahlangu? I mean, just recently we heard how Edwin Sodi, who's being implicated in all kinds of corrupt dealings, was one of the people who'd actually given the ANC a lot of money in our recent past. It almost feels like that's the tip of the iceberg. How much does the IEC know about, how much money political parties are receiving actually come from private donors?
You see, the Commission may not know at the moment, how much money has been funded to a particular political party. Because the only legislation that the IEC is responsible for is the existing public funding on represented political parties. And that's what the Commission is reporting on and allocating what has been allocated to the represented political parties. Private funding has not been, part of legislation in South Africa. Basically, this political party funding act that has been signed, once implemented, then the society and the public at large would know who has funded a particular political party. So at the moment, the IEC is not in the business of, being aware how much has been, put into the coffers of party A or party B.
And I do wonder, how would that knowledge change how the IEC works, if in any way at all?
Look, the legislation has put, at the desktop of the Commission. We are preparing ourselves to implement, the legislation. Once the President has announced the implementation date, we will be in a position, to manage this legislation. At the moment, we are training political parties on the online party funding system that has been developed by the Commission, so that, when that date, is announced by the President, then we'll be in a position to utilize the system. We have developed the political party funding regulations. So I must say that as a Commission, we are ready. Once this date has been announced, we'll be in a position to run with the implementation of this legislation.
All right, let's leave it there. Thanks very much for your time, giving us your take on this developing story. George Mahlangu is the IEC Chief Executive who's in charge of political funding. It's an interesting conversation, and I'm sure you have a lot to say about it too. I mean, as a taxpayer in this country, are you comfortable with the idea that our political parties could be funded more from the state's coffers? And the argument being made is that that is to protect our democracy, so that essentially these parties are not captured by private donors. I wonder how you see it. Do tweet us at Newsroom 405.